Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Anchored in Annapolis, where we dive into people, places, and purpose that make this community one of a kind. I'm your host, Jennifer Chino, and today we're talking all about leadership, what it means, why it matters, and how it's shaping the future of Anne Arundel County. Joining me is someone who truly lives and breathes community impact, and that is Kris Shock, the president and CEO of Leadership Anne Arundel. If you've ever wondered how local leaders are built, connected, and inspired, this conversation is for you. We'll talk about Kris's journey, the mission behind Leadership Anne Arundel, and how our programs are creating real changes across our neighborhoods, nonprofits, and local government. Let's jump on in. Welcome, Kris. I'm so excited to have you.
I'm so happy to be here.
So we met back in 2020. So I was the class of 2020. So it was really 2019.
19. Yep.
Okay.
September, your opening retreat.
Oh my gosh, I was so excited. A little bit of how I got involved in Leadership Anne Arundel is I was with so many women who were all alumni of Leadership Anne Arundel, and I just kept hearing them talk about how amazing the program was. I didn't understand what the program was, but just the camaraderie and the kinship that they had made me just want to explore it. So I was so excited, and I'll be honest, as being a working professional, when I found out I couldn't only miss 2, and there were all these requirements. I'm like, oh gosh, how am I going to get through this? And let me tell you, I never wanted to miss a day, ever. At any point, I would cancel my entire day to make sure that I was there because I loved it so much, and it's really hard to sort of describe, which we'll go into that in a second. But first, I want to hear about how you got involved in leadership.
Sure, absolutely. I'll share that. Though you just reminded me, I think we first met that summer before you started. I think we had a Women's Executive Forum event that you came to. So you'd already been accepted to the program.
Yes.
But I just flashed back. That was at that Prism location, and that was, So I think that's when I first met you.
Yes.
So I was born and raised in Annapolis. I grew up in Epping Forest. And Annapolis kid. I went to public school all the way through, and I come from a very creative family, an artistic family. My maiden name was Valerio, is Valerio. So the Valerios in Annapolis were all arts. So my dad was a graphic designer. He designed books to support his family, but he was really a portrait artist by trade. And my mom was an actor and teacher. My brother's a musician, played for the Naval Academy Band and the Symphony. So my kind of art in our family was theater. So I never kind of thought of doing anything else. I went to Towson and got a theater degree, and as soon as I could, moved up to New York City. And I was there for 8 years pursuing an acting career, and decided ultimately to step away from that. But so when I moved back to Annapolis, first of all, I never thought of going anywhere else, which is interesting.
It happens.
I just, it's like, well, if I'm not going to be in New York to be an actor, I'm going back to Annapolis. And so I came back, and my first job I got was wine sales in DC, which it was funny, reflecting recently, I was like, I never even considered living in DC. I just commuted, which was rough. So as soon as, I continued looking for jobs here in Annapolis, and the first one I found was working for the Annapolis and Anne Arundel County Chamber of Commerce. And I was in membership at the chamber, and they put me through the Flagship program. Okay. So it was 2005, so I was in the 06 class. So I went from September 05 through June 06. And that's when, the light turned on in leadership in general, and specifically Leadership Anne Arundel. Griff Hall was the executive director at the time, and it just was an amazing experience. And, that 360-degree understanding of the community, which was so helpful to me because having grown up here, I didn't understand how the community worked. I just lived here. So so different.
Yes.
And especially because I, really had that first decade of my career was New York and theater. So it wasn't the business community or the nonprofit community. I had a lot to catch up on, and Leadership Anne Arundel was a very efficient way for me to do a lot of that catching up, and it was awesome. I loved the experience. From there, I left the chamber. I ran the Chesapeake Regional Tech Council for 7 or 8 years. I was there. I was at the Maryland Department of Commerce running strategic industries and entrepreneurship when the executive director of Leadership Anne Arundel announced his retirement. And a light bulb went on that while I had a fabulous experience in the program, so many years ago by then, I didn't really feel like there was much for alumni to do. I was like, I've been an alumni. I feel very proud of my leadership experience, but I don't really feel like there's much for me to engage with. So my whole interview process, I was like, we need an alumni forum. We need, a way we prepare these leaders and we send them off to every other nonprofit, like go fly. And we don't have as much of a reason for them to stay engaged. So that's what I kind of ran on, so to speak. Got the job, started in May 2019, and so your class was my first class.
The best class.
The best class. Secret, they're all the best class. But yours was the class that March of 2020.
Right.
We were in your Law and Public Safety Day, my very first year going through with a cohort when COVID happened. And 2 days after that session day, the whole county got shut down. So you had a virtual graduation.
I did.
It was crazy, but having, learning the organization and the program and all of that from the staff side while adapting to a global pandemic was a real, crazy experience. So, but that was my first year. So I'm now about 6 years in this role.
And you sort of navigated through that, and now I know that there were classes that happened after us, so you didn't let the pandemic sort of stop how all of that worked. And I know personally know people who were in it right after, and it just flowed so seamlessly. Yeah,
I think the 21 class, now that we have the opportunity to reflect, had it the hardest. Your class certainly, you had your last 2 sessions were virtual, and then your graduation was virtual, but you had already really gelled with your class by then in all of the in-person, experiences. 21 came on, and we were in person as much as we possibly could be, but we'd have, a flare up happen, and we'd have to go back to virtual, and they really rolled with it. And, in many ways, they had it the hardest. In other ways, they had a really unique experience by being able to connect with the leaders in our community during a pandemic and understand how everybody was adapting was a really unique experience. So we're very, very proud that we were able to continue operations straight through the pandemic. We were Zooming when we had to Zoom, and we did
zigging and zagging.
All the things. We had their government day was at People's Park outside. We had our legislators come out. People brought their camping chairs and stuff, and it was wild. We were outside because that was October of 2020. So people, we had a lot of restrictions in place. It was unique.
That was fascinating. I think the first day, is it always the first session is always government?
After the retreat. So so folks who aren't familiar with the Flagship program, it's a 10-month program. So it starts in September, graduates in June. And the first month, September, is a 2-day opening retreat. And that's all day.
Amazing.
And that's really where the cohort bonds and really gets to know each other and gets on one team. After that, the first subject matter session day, there are 8 different session days with all different topics through the year, and then there's a closing retreat. So that's kind of the structure of the program. And the first topical day is Government Day.
Yeah. It was being here for since 1984. And just having the minimal exposure to the government. I mean, you were here in the Capitol, and you see, when legislation is in session, and you know all these things, but to actually go in and experience it almost as if you are there it was just fascinating. It's not like nothing I ever experienced. It was a great day, probably one of my favorite days. Do you have a special place in your heart for any of the different sessions?
I really love them all. I know that sounds cliche, but it's kind of like picking your favorite child. Right. And it really probably any year a different one might be my favorite. I certainly love Cultural Arts Day because that's how I grew up in the community. So it's near and dear to my heart. But yeah, they're all so unique. So again, for folks who aren't familiar with the program, they're really, each session day dives into a specific part of our community. So there's government, as we've talked about, but there's economic development, there's cultural arts, education, health and human services. So all of these different topics, law and public safety, we're unique in Anne Arundel County in that one of them, a whole session day, is agriculture in South County. Right. Because our county goes way up to border Baltimore City, and we cover that during Economic Development Day. And we go all the way down through South County, and it's just such, and with the state capitol smack in the middle of it. So we have such a diverse county in so many ways. We have a whole day devoted to agriculture. So we're out in the middle of farms and looking at cows and learning about the agriculture side of things that makes it such a rich community. So just the diversity of all of that. Environment Day, we are literally out in the environment planting trees and things, and just learning about, we have the Chesapeake Bay Foundation right here locally. And so just all of those different pieces, it's hard to have a favorite when, each day is just so specific.
It was so unique. For those who are unfamiliar with Leadership Anne Arundel, how would you explain sort of the mission? Because that was probably my hardest when I am asked about it. I have nothing but magical things to say about it. But how would you explain what the mission is for Leadership Anne Arundel?
So the mission is really simple. We provide people of diverse backgrounds with the education, resources, and networks necessary to become successful, proactive leaders. So people get connected. I shorten that often to just say we inspire, develop, and connect our local leaders. It's a critical difference is people think of leadership development and often they think corporate leadership or something that's going to make them a better leader. Mm-hmm. And there's certainly lots about the Leadership Anne Arundel experience that will make an individual a better leader, but it's not really about the individual leaders. Right. It's about the community overall, understanding the leaders that are currently in positions of leadership, understanding the unique opportunities and challenges of our community, and then figuring out where you fit in there, like where your best connection is. So it's just interesting. Some people come to us, and in the interview process for the Flagship program, it's, really I take my role very seriously, that helping them understand this is not just about your own leadership journey. This is about understanding our community and then figuring out your best place to have a positive impact on it. So that's ultimately the mission, and just developing the leaders in our community who will step up and lead in all different areas in our community. That's why we have those different topic days, throughout the program. Somebody might come in the program a professional, engaged in the environment per se, and that's their area, but they might light a fire around, specific human services area, and that's what they really want to participate in moving forward. So,
what candidates do you look for somebody who's looking to apply to be at one of the Flagship classes? Yeah,
it's there. That runs the gamut. That's one of the fun things is we really do look to put together a diverse cohort in every way. You hear diversity and you think of, racial, ethnic, gender diversity, and certainly that is important in our cohorts, but also ages. Like we have some people who come in who are rising leaders. They're really young, and their employers sponsor them through the program because they want to keep them and want them to develop in their own experiences. But we also have people who are retiring, and they retire to Anne Arundel County. A lot from Montgomery County. We get a lot of folks who retire here from Montgomery County.
That's true.
And they want to figure out in their retirement where their best engagement is and how they'll make best use of their time, what nonprofits they should volunteer with. And then everything in between. We've got, folks who participate, get sponsored by their companies to participate at all levels of leadership. And people who sponsor themselves, who, invest in it themselves because they really want to understand, how to best, engage in our community. So, really the ideal person is somebody who has a passion for the community and wants to have a role, wants to impact it in a positive way. And that's the, the main, what makes a good Flagship participant is somebody who's open to really understanding our community in a profound way and playing a role.
Well, I loved all the connections and the people that I met. And it's people that I wouldn't have met any way else. Like, it's just so unique because you put all these people together. And I don't think there would have been another opportunity for me to meet a lot of these people. And I have a job where I meet a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life. But it was fascinating. And the other thing I was surprised about was how close the class is. I mean, really, we don't get together as much as we used to, but if I needed anything, I could call anybody in my class and they would be there in a heartbeat to help. And that is just so unique from a program like that. It's almost like a fraternity and sorority all in one, which is kind of what I tell people, which is...
No, it's true. I think it's interesting, it just, as people, we have friends from our youth. We have friends that we knew in childhood. We have friends who we knew in high school, college. But there's a point where, you have your friends that you make when you have children and, your parents of your kids' friends. But we don't really, when we're adults, have an opportunity to build deep relationships with other adults. It just doesn't, you have your work relationships. But I think there's something about the, process that is Flagship where you build a depth of relationship with adults that, to your point, you wouldn't have necessarily crossed paths with. And so I guarantee you, even if you're not connecting with them as much as you were when you first graduated, you pick up the phone today to any of your 2020 colleagues and they will absolutely help you in any way.
I actually did last week. And I'm sending her flowers because she helped me out with a huge problem that I had. And she just like no questions asked. Was,
Yeah.
And I would do the same for any of my classmates.
Yeah.
And that is just the bond, actually, that we developed during the retreat, the
Mm-hmm.
2-day retreat. And it was like from that point forward, we had that very close bond, and we took it all the way through, and then beyond, you know, graduation. It was just amazing. So if people are looking to, for the application process, can you tell us a little bit about what that entails, sort of what the deadline is, and then who you're accepting applications for now?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things too. We have another program called the Neighborhood Leadership Academy.
Okay.
So I'll share that because there are different application periods for different programs. So the Flagship program, as I've described, is similar to community leadership programs across the country. So we are our own independent organization, a 501c3, but we are similar. These community leadership organizations, we're members of the Association of Community Programs that is across the country.
Okay.
Association of Leadership Programs across the country. And that formula, some of them call it a flagship program, some of them call it something else, but the formula we've been talking about, this opening retreat, the session days, the graduation, is similar. And so that's our flagship program. But about 5 years into our existence, we were approached by a community leader who said, you know, it's great that you're preparing these leaders, but there are grassroots leaders who are working in our under-resourced communities who either can't take a Thursday out of their work week because our programs take place all day on a Thursday. Their employers, you know, they don't have that flexibility.
Right.
Or they can't afford it, just frankly
Right.
can't afford the program. There is a tuition cost, and we're very proud to have a tuition assistance program where people can apply for support, but there's a cost to it. So her name was Bertina Nick, and she, you know, basically challenged us and said, you know, how are you going to serve these grassroots leaders? So LAA created our own individual program. The board, the class at the time, and key community leaders put together the Neighborhood Leadership Academy. And it specifically targets the grassroots leaders who are already embedded in these under-resourced communities. So they're doing the after-school programs for the kids. They're helping the seniors. They're already have the relationships, but they don't necessarily have access to the resources. They don't have that network of leaders. So the NLA program is 6 months. It runs January through June, and the curriculum, in contrast to what we've been talking about,
Right.
it covers more the leadership development topics. So the first one's all about the cornerstone of leadership, that's communication. The next one is accessing resources and conflict resolution, and, you know, so those kinds of cornerstones of leadership development is what the NLA program focuses on, and helps those community leaders then to also access the resources through the rest of LAA. So those are the two current programs, are the Flagship program and the Neighborhood Leadership Academy. We build our NLA class in the fall, and it starts January through June. So October is the time to apply for that program.
Okay.
Leadershipaa.org, the application's right there, and we'll start taking them from October 1st through about mid-December.
Okay.
We announce in the top of January, and then again, that's just one Saturday out of the month. So we try to remove that commitment issue of
Right.
a weekday, and it's 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. one Saturday a month. Flagship, we start the application period in January, and it goes through March.
Okay.
So we do typically run a wait list after that. So for people who learn about the program in April or May or what have you, they can still apply on a wait list. And then, you know, it may be that they'll get in that coming year, or they'll be first in line for the following year. But so it's a January through March application period. We interview from April through June. We announce the class to the participants in June. We don't do a press release on it until they show up for the retreat. Okay. So some leadership programs announce when they choose their class, and I'm like, how do you know they're really going to show up?
Right.
So the opening retreat is mandatory. All day of both
Right.
days is mandatory, because as you've shared, that's really when you bond with your
Correct.
class.
Yes.
So that's how the wait list is involved too. We sometimes have somebody who will, you know, come back during the summer, and they're like, well, I have to leave early the second day, and we're like, then next year's the year for you. So.
Totally worth it. Just taking off those 2 days, and
Yeah.
it is the best. You know, I was a little skeptical when I first, and I thought, how am I going to get off of 2 days of work and then
Right.
not check it? It was the most magical. It was the best use of my time, and I highly recommend it. It was amazing.
Thank you. You know, the thing that I've realized from this side, you know, I went through it as I've shared, but being on staff side, what I've seen happens for people is there's an efficiency.
Yes.
You meet so many people that can help you in so
Yes.
many ways that you're thinking about. It's kind of, I think of my pop culture references are dated, but the wax on, wax off,
Right.
the Karate Kid,
Absolutely.
right? There's the Zen thing that happens where you meet enough people that other things happen more swiftly, so that taking the day out is not that big of a deal,
Right.
because there's an efficiency that happens.
Yes.
So it is something that people do struggle with, because they're
Yes.
leaders and they're like,
Oh,
can I take the
know.
time? And it's like, you will find
Yes, trust
it will
me.
save you time
Yes.
in other ways.
And it's
so
worth it. It is absolutely worth it.
It is a
Coming from
commitment.
skeptic, it was
Yeah.
absolutely worth it. Best thing I've ever
Thank
done.
you.
Yes, I totally agree. Okay, question that I'm going to start asking guests. Do you have like a favorite thing about Annapolis or Anne Arundel County, like a local haunt? Like what do you love?
So
I know it's on the spot, but it could
Yeah.
literally be anything.
yeah, well, the first thing that comes to mind is the water. I
Yes.
love being near the
Uh-huh.
water. I like to. So I don't live near the water. I live in Annapolis. I live in the city of Annapolis, but we're not on the water. But I can jump in my car. I take my dogs often, like early in the morning, a few times a week. We'll jump in the car and go down to the city dock or go to Eastport and do like a 3-mile walk around. In Eastport, we'll end up at Oscar's Coffee or downtown. It may be Rise Up or what have you, but we can, just knock out a 3-mile walk with my dogs at the water. And it's different every time. I do this all year round. So sometimes in February, it is freezing cold, but it is the landscape. I'll take pictures in the morning and I have this 4 seasons, look of just this incredible place that we live. And just sometimes I get knocked out by with the State House. The State House is so gorgeous. And on a beautiful day, I'll look up and go, I get to live with this beautiful. So that to me, again, not even living on the water, there's certainly many people who are blessed to get to live right on the water, which is amazing. But the access that you can still, even if you don't live on the water, can be downtown. The parking in the morning is free,
Right.
so you can park and get to feel this incredible place that we live in. So that's my favorite. But when I moved back here from New York, one of the drivers was you can just be anywhere so easily.
Yes.
So I can live in Annapolis, this quaint town that is so lovely, but I can be on a plane to New York or a train,
Yes.
so easily. Get to the beach, get to the mountains, all of that. So you get the kind of the best of all things in this county, I feel
agree
like.
with you. I couldn't agree more. Now, if people are interested in contacting you or sending an application, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Really, our website is leadershipaa.org. My contact information is right on the website, so they can email me directly through there. Certainly our social channels, we're on Facebook and Instagram and all of that, and there you really we post lots of pictures of our session days, of our community, so you really get a feel. It's, I know you know this already because you've been engaged. It's an incredibly warm community.
It is, very much
so. It's
yes.
not a very intimidating
Not at
group
all.
to engage with.
Not
So
at all.
you can see our pictures and experience through our website and through our social channels, and then pick something and just come out, and you'll be welcomed. People will help you figure out, is one of our programs the right place for you right now? It might not be. I think, because we've talked about it, it is a commitment.
Yes.
But I think of it kind of like jump rope, where a lot of people have have Flagship on their bucket list, and they're like, I want to do that one day. And they've got small children, or they've, where they're doing carpools and they're on the soccer field. So it might not be the right time. But then the kids fly away, and there's empty nest, and they're like, it's time
You're
now.
like, come on in.
And they'll apply, and it's a perfect time.
Yeah.
So it's like, when is the right season for you to go through the program? Even if that season is months or years away, we have networking, we have leadership and lattes, which is an easy coffee thing to come to. We have quarterly events that are geared for our alumni, but are welcome the whole community. So it's a great time to kind of come and connect and start the relationships, so that by the time it's right for you to go through the program, you've got that network and you can dive right in.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time with me today.
It's my pleasure.
And if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments or reach out to Kris via the website. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Yay.